Hey y'all, welcome back. My name is Crystal, and today I've got another book chat video for you. I just thought I'd do a little video about some books, quite a stack here of books, that share a theme. I seem to be drawn to these sort of stories. I always pick them up, especially if I see like a thrift store or something like that, and if I see this like, oh, it's about this, let me just go ahead and grab it. I'm gonna grab it. And that's art in general. Art, either about an artist or about being an artist, or about a specific painting, what have you. And I was an art major in college, and so art is definitely important to me and important in my life. And so why not, of course, read about it as well. And so I've got a big stack here of books that are on my shelf. A few I've read, most I haven't. Story of my life, but they are somewhere related to art, and I thought it would be fun to chat about today. So let's get started with our list. First up, we're going to talk about The Muse by Jessie Burton. Absolutely gorgeous cover on this one. It looks like we have a woman named Odell. I don't remember much what this one's about, so let me just read it for you. She takes a job at a prestigious art institute, and it looks like they discover a painting rumored to be the work of this guy named Isaac Robles, who mysteriously died. And so I think she basically just gets wrapped up in finding this painting and then trying to find out how this artist died, I think is the overall gist of this one. Definitely sounds pretty good. And that cover, I mean, oh my gosh, can't beat that one. Let's see, we've got The Cipher by Koujo. Now, this was one that I didn't know had an art sort of portion to it necessarily until I read this one. This is one that I read, and we've got, this just takes place in the 1990s. There's this dude who finds this like black hole of nowhere in his apartment building. They dub it the fun hole. The art piece comes in because these sort of art students start coming in. These are like friends of a friend kind of thing, and they get also obsessed with this fun hole because it's a hole that goes nowhere, and people are just drawn to it naturally. And they come and make this pretentious art and everything about it, but it's very reminiscent of what it's like to be an art student. So I liked that part of the book. It was a sort of pleasant surprise for me. All right, we've got The Birth of Venus by Sarah Dunant. This one's a historical fiction, takes place in the 1600s, and it looks like we have sort of a young girl here she's 15, and there's a young painter who kind of is brought into the town to paint the chapel. And looks like there's a monk who also probably hates art and gets wrapped up in some drama maybe, but really this young girl is just, I think, becomes enamored with this artist, and I don't know, perhaps there's a love affair? I don't know. I have not read this one, so I can't tell you, but I do like historical fiction, and historical fiction about art and artists. Yes, please. Oops, my list fell. All right. Now this one is also interesting me because of the time travel piece, but we've got The Time Traveler's Wife by Audrey Niffenegger. And the man in the story is the time traveler, but the wife in the story is an artist, and but she is, of course, the one that's static in her timeline, and I don't know how art really plays into this story much. This is one I haven't read yet, but it's interesting because she's an artist. I'm wondering I wonder how much his sort of time travel, does it play into her art at all? Is there art even mentioned much in the book? I don't know, but it is on the list. We'll get to it some year, right? Okay, this one, I'm really pulled to this one. This one's Artemisia by Alexandra Lapierre. This is a historical fiction, but it is about a real person, Artemisia Gentileschi, who, again, in these sort of mid-1600s, she apprenticed under her father, who was a famous painter, a very good painter, and I think probably because it was her father, she was sort of allowed to be an apprentice. Most women artists weren't taken very seriously back then, and again, this is based on truth, and her father's partner actually raped Artemisia, and there was a whole big stir up over it, trial, and I think she's even tortured, and she under no circumstances denies that she was raped by this guy. She's just like, I'm not going to sit here and say that he didn't do that when he did. But so I think it goes into a lot of that, and then hopefully a lot of her becoming, moving past that and working on her art. And what I love about this one is it does actually have a few of her pieces in here, particularly one of my favorite, which is Judith slaying Holofernes. She was so before her time. So yeah, this one's actually really pulling to me. I would love to get into that one. Of course, I've got The Girl with the Pearl Earring by Tracy Chevalier. This is just the movie tie-in cover. This movie came out, gosh, a long time ago now. I've definitely seen the movie, but I've not read this book. But this is sort of a play on that Vermeer painting, Girl with a Pearl Earring, and it takes a more erotic turn with the artist and this girl here. And I think it's sort of, I don't want to say coming of age, that's not really, sexual awakening, we'll say, from this girl. I expect this was very good, because it's Tracy Chevalier. But there's that same sort of time period, those mid-1600s. So a lot of these actually seem to be about that time period. But this was a middle grade, actually, and it's The Strange and Deadly Portraits of Brian E. Gray by E. Latimer. It's a great cover. So we have this young girl who's very amazing artist, but her uncle, I guess, is like this total jerk and like keeps her locked up in their attic and just says, paint for me so I can just sell them and make all this money while I keep you trapped up here in the attic. And it looks like one of her paintings comes to life, and I guess, I don't know, wreaks havoc around London. I'm not sure. I have not read this one either. So, I don't know. It looks like the back here there's some sort of family curse. So this one sounds pretty good, actually. And yeah, that one sounds good. I might have to dig into this one soon too. So that's The Strange and Deadly Portraits of Brian E. Gray. That sounds pretty good. Okay, this one is The Creation of Eve by Lynn Cullen, another historical fiction. And let's see, this one takes place a little bit earlier, more sort of mid-1500s. And let's see. Now this one is, which one is this one? Yes, so this is a historical fiction book about another famous female artist that no one, learns about because women artists weren't really deemed as artists. But this is a sort of fictional telling about Sofonisba Anguissola. I'll put one of her works here. She was a fantastic painter as well. And so I think this is really just sort of a kind of, historical fiction telling of her story. And I think it sounds fantastic, because these are women where their stories weren't necessarily told. So even if it's a fictional story, I feel like learning about that Sofonisba Anguissola was an actual person who existed in the world, I think is a good thing. So that one sounds good too. Of course, we've got a Margaret Atwood here, Cat's Eye. Now this one is about an artist. This was more current time period. This was about an artist who was quite famous, quite prolific. She's a pretty famous avant-garde type artist, and she goes home for a retrospective of her work. And in going home, I think she's sort of that trope of going home again, which I love. She, I think, faces maybe some demons that she had as a childhood there through, I think, childhood bullying, I think, is a big deal in here. Also, I think just some family issues that she was dealing with. I think all of that is in here. And but it's all sort of based around, of course, her work as this artist and being deemed important by feminists and things like that. This is an what I've not read yet, and it's a chunky one, but that one sounds really good. All right. The Last Painting of Sarah DeVos by Dominic Smith. Gorgeous cover. So this one seems like we've got a few different timelines. We've got Amsterdam, the 1630s, again, that time period where Sarah DeVos is the first woman to be admitted as a master painter to this guild, and she paints this landscape, which for some reason women don't seem to paint landscapes. I don't know, whatever. And this painting is called At the Edge of the Wood, and it becomes, I guess, very famous throughout history. And then there's another time period of the 1950s in New York City where this dude owns this painting by Sarah DeVos, and looks like someone agrees to forge the painting. I don't know why, but it then jumps to 2000 time period where we've got this art historian and curator who is putting together an exhibition of female painters of that Dutch golden age. And then when it comes to light that she's got both of these paintings coming for this exhibit, the original and the one that was forged in the 1950s. So looks like our story goes from there. And that sounds a bit dramatic. That one sounds pretty good. Okay, I've just got a couple more here, guys. Diary by Chuck Palahniuk. Okay. This, I always find it hard to describe Chuck's books. But we've got this woman named Misty. This one I read, of course, because it's a Chuck book. And she was an artist. She was, and loving doing her work and everything. But she soon gets married, and her husband lives on this kind of remote island, and her life just kind of turns sort of ho-hum, and she just works in a hotel as like a cleaning lady and all this stuff. Her life is just, and through a Chuck Palahniuk story, this woman becomes slightly, I don't want to say obsessed. I don't know how I want to word this, but she starts painting again. We'll say that. But we don't really know why her work is taking on the sort of feelings of this other local woman artist on this island. I think I did a crappy job of explaining this book, but that's the artist, at least a portion of this book. There's also this whole story of her husband is like a contractor and remodels homes and stuff, and he like adds extra rooms into the spaces and like puts some like words all over the walls and stuff. It's a thing, but it's a Chuck book about art. Last one, another one I haven't read, is Duma Key by Stephen King, and I didn't realize this had an artist portion until I was looking at a list, and I was like, oh, this has an artist in it? I need to get to this one maybe a little sooner, but it's a chunky one. It looks like we have this guy who looks like he has a really bad accident, and so his doctor's kind of like, maybe you just take a break and move down to Florida. So he sets off to Florida, and looks like he starts painting. Meets a woman, starts painting, and it looks like his paintings have a power that cannot be controlled. I mean, that sounds great, yeah? Yeah, maybe this would be like a summer read, actually, since it's on the beach. I might need to make that one happen. That sounds like a good July book. Oh, I dropped my list again. Now, I just have a few books here that I do not own, but are really high on my list of that I would really like to read. I'm going to go through those just really quickly. The first is Lust for Life by Irving Stone. It's a fictional story, or semi-autobiographical type story about Vincent van Gogh. There's just something about Van Gogh, that his story pulls you in, and this book in particular is one that really intrigues me. The Collector by John Fowles, or Foles, I'm not sure. Okay, this one sounds good too. There's this guy who collects beautiful things, and he sees this young art student and decides she needs to be in his collection. That sounds pretty good, right? This one is also tippity top of my list, is Rodin's Lover by Heather Mariah Webb. This is a story about the love affair between Auguste Rodin and Camille Claudel, and they just really had this sort of hate-love relationship. And Camille Claudel was also a sculptor, apprenticed under Rodin, but she ended up basically wasting away in a mental institution, from what I remember of our history class. It's also said that many of her sculptures are passed off as Rodin sculptures today, because of course they are. But that one sounds really good. Let's see. Also, another in that vein that really sounds interesting is I Always Loved You by Robin Oliveira. And this is sort of a story about Marie Cassatt and Edgar Degas, who I don't think I was aware that they had a love affair, but maybe so. Let me also show you this book. I should have had it ready. And it's a non-fiction book, but it is a book that I really want to read, and I just really need to start it. But it's 9th Street Women. This is it's a non-fiction book, but it talks about the artists Lee Krasner, Elaine de Kooning, Grace Hardigan, Joan Mitchell, and Helen Frankenthaler, 5 painters at the movement that changed modern art. So this sounds fascinating. I love all of these women, and movement of this time period too, the sort of modernist expression period, and it's filled with wonderful photographs, and this just sounds really, I've got to get into this. It's huge, but gotta add that to my list as well. So that's it. That's a lot of really great sounding books about art and artists, and I now want to read them all right now because I've talked about them. Isn't that the way? Do you have any others that you could recommend to me? Have you read any of these? I would love to know. Or like, what is sort of like a buzzword theme that is like basically auto-buy for you? I would love to know. Thanks as always so much for watching. I always appreciate you spending time with me and coming to hang out with me. It's so appreciated. And that'll do it for me today. I'll catch you in the next one. Bye-bye.